Hey everybody, our goal at Courtepointe Quebec is to offer you conferences. So today I'm very pleased to share with you a meeting with Clarie. Many of you may remember her as a store owner, a teacher, and a pattern designer. When she had her quilt store in Laval, Courtepointe Claire. But that was just a stepping stone in her career. So without further ado, let me present to you Claire.
So thank you everyone for being here, and thank you Courtepointe Quebec for this great initiative. It's my pleasure to explain a little bit of my story, my journey through quilting in approximately 45 minutes. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have during or after the presentation. As you wish, you can just write your questions there's a section somewhere. You can find it on your screen. You can write your questions and someone will read them to me either during or after the presentation. So let's get started. So 1998 is not the year I was born, but it's actually still a stepping stone for me because it's the year that I actually discovered the wonderful world of quilting. Might be surprising for some of you, but I am not from a long line of seamstress. It's quite the opposite. I did everything I could when I turned 18 to get my very first sewing machine. But once I finally got it, no one was there to show me how to use it. So that's how far my journey for sewing was in those days. We have to understand also the background. My parents immigrated to Canada in 1969. I was with my parents and my sister in Canada. I had no grandmother who was sewing, and my mother definitely not a seamstress. It's actually when I was working as a sales manager for a company that was traveling across Canada to visit the reps. And it's one of my reps in Guelph that showed me what was quilting. When I asked her what she did in her as a hobby, she told me she was quilting, and I had no idea what that was. And that's when the next time I went to see her, she actually showed me a quilt she finished, and it was basically love at first sight. So that's when I started the adventure going around Canada, stopping in quilt shops and buying magazines and books to learn how to then going back into the basement of my house and trying to figure it out on my own. Because we also have to remember 1998, 2000, 2002, those years, internet did not exist, YouTube did not exist. So you basically had paper reading material, a little bit of pictures, but no video explaining to you how everything worked. So it was quite a complete different world than what we have today. And but I still tried to understand as best as I could in my basement. And you can actually see 2004 was the first time I actually put a quilt up in a show for Courtepointe Quebec in I believe it was June 2004. And it's the same year that I opened the shop Courtepointe Claire in Laval and started learning how to quilt with my students. Because in 2002, when I was on my maternity leave, I tried to visit local quilt shops and trying to learn how to take quilting classes. And actually, even before that, when I was still working, trying to get quilting classes in evenings and in weekends. And the only time you could actually take a quilting class in those days were like Monday to Friday during my work hours. So I really could never go and take a quilting class. And also try for me, which I know it doesn't sound like it, but French is my mother tongue. So trying to learn how to quilt in my mother tongue was absolutely impossible. And so that's how the whole idea of opening up Courtepointe Quebec came about. So I opened the shop in 2004, and in 2006, you can see my first actually real, well, if I can say, because it was not my first quilt, but I always called it my first real quilt because it was the quilt I made in a beginner's class. So that's when I really actually figured out how to use a rotary cutter, why we need a 1/4 inch foot to do your sewing. So I really learned how to learn the basics with my fellow customers by my side. So that's when I started my true quilting perfection journey, although I'm always saying that we're a quilt away from perfection, even to this day. So in 2006, I'm starting to feel pretty good in the world of quilting, first as a business owner, because that was my background. That was my studies were in business. So it was, for me, easy to have the quilt shop, but also I started feeling comfortable as a quilter, presenting myself to customers as, yes, I do quilt, I know what I'm doing. My strength at that point was to really be able to draw sketches for the customers that came into the store. So they would show me a quilt design that they wanted to do, and then I pulled out pen and paper and started designing the quilt for them, calculating the quantity of fabric they needed, the size of the blocks they needed to fit on a bed or anything, any kind of calculation. So that was really my strong point at that time. And when several customers would actually ask me the same pattern, at what point I would come back home at night and write up the pattern on my computer, so that the next time someone would ask me for the same pattern, I would simply have to print it out and give it to her, so that I wouldn't have to rewrite the whole pattern. So I guess that's how my own line of pattern came about. It wasn't really an idea, oh, let's do this. It was just out of necessity, because, you know, at one point when 20 people have asked you how to make a log cabin, well, it's better to just have the whole pattern printed so you can just hand it over. So that's how the whole idea started, for after having Courtepointe Claire started. Here's my two eldest boys in front of their quilts that they made together for the Vermont Quilt Festival and the Salon de la Courtepointe in 2014. They won a ribbon in both shows, and you can watch actually there's a video on YouTube showing the highlights of how they came about to make the quilt, because it's children's, it was in the category for children, so no adult could actually make the quilt. So we had to come up with a design that they could actually cut and sew themselves and quilt themselves. So that was quite the challenge, and we took 4 ped days to make that quilt, and it was a lot of fun for me to see that video again on YouTube. So you can go and see it on the Courtepointe Claire's page on YouTube. But I show this photo also because I realized that my kids played an important role without even knowing it for me as a quilter and as a teacher at my shop. It was quite a challenge for me when my eldest, Laurent, started his first grade because it's kind of, yeah, the same, but he had to learn how to read and how to write and how to count. And all of a sudden, it became quite a challenge for both mother and son. It was there that I realized that some people learn by seeing, some people learn by hearing, and some people learn by doing. So, and it's a whole different way of teaching. I've also learned at that time that there's some special acronyms for this world, and one of them is ADD, so attention deficit disorder, and another one is dyslexia. Those wonderful words came into in my world. So all of those are terms commonly used for children in the school environment. I realized quickly in the shop that it was not just for the small people of this world. It was actually the whole population that had, you know, different ways of learning, and some of them have ADDs and even dyslexia without even knowing. They just never realized it, but they lacked self-confidence when they were younger and just stopped trying to learn new things. So that's when the fun started for me in the store, because every time I would have a new customer come in to take our basic class, it was also fun to realize that some of them had ADD or had dyslexia that didn't even know about. And it was just fun to help them learn through their special uniqueness. So that was a new quilting challenge for me that I really like doing at Courtepointe Quebec. And so it was just a great adventure from 2004 to 2016. The store quickly became a reference for quilters in French, mostly French-speaking quilters. And we can find there was a lot of talent in the whole, in the store, not just for, and I'm not just talking about the teachers, but it was also the customers, the teacher, the students, and the people that would come to the store to buy fabric. It was just a bunch of talented people. And I think instinctively I had the flair to find talent in people that didn't even know they had it and push them to go further with their the quilting, whether it be through exhibiting in shows and winning, or teaching, or even writing and creating their own design and patterns. So that was really fun in the whole quilting shop. I think many of the customers and teachers would also agree that the Courtepointe Claire became a second family to everyone. The store was at first located in Club Tissu from 2004 to 2009. And then it was, we had our own store on Boulevard d'Agenais from 2009 to 2016. It was always a pleasure to go there. There was not one day I didn't want to go. And it was just a bunch of happy memories that just keep on going. I'm not just talking about quilts or making quilts. I often found myself surrounded with positive energy from everybody there. Women who didn't even know each other before a class, all of a sudden find affinities and become the closest friends. We didn't just help people figure out how to make quilts. We also helped each other in everyday life challenges, whether it was potty training a child or dealing with family feuds or even grieving for a loss of a child or a loved one. I often say that when we went to the store, it was kind of like our own Cheers. If you remember the show from the 80s and 90s, everybody knew, I actually knew everybody's name. Everyone was family, and we helped each other out through the goods and through the bads. And I also want to introduce you to an important person in my quilting universe. Colleen Paul has always been a partner in my creation in my quilt creations. Basically, I hope that you won't judge me, but with 3 children, a business, and having to make a quilt a month for at least 12 years, if it's not more than 1 quilt a month, it was clear to me that I couldn't handle everything. So since Colleen had opened her long arm quilting business at the same time as I opened my quilt shop, it became second nature for me to send her my quilts every time they needed to be quilted. So the majority of the quilts you'll be seeing on this presentation or anywhere on my website, for the majority of them, they have all been quilted by Colleen. So if you'll see in some of this, at some point, I will tell you a different one, but if there's no specification, just be sure that it was Colleen that was the quilter behind the piece. She's my right arm, my left brain, whatever. We complete each other. I start a design and she successfully finishes it in the quilting. And if you're interested in finding out more about her, do visit her website, twizzle.ca. Now let's talk about my creative process. For me, it all starts with the creation of a design. I'm really unable to follow a pattern as is. I'm sorry, I don't know if it's my ADD or my own dyslexia, I just can't. Even when I'm cooking, I can't follow a recipe. So if I'm doing a quilt, I cannot for the life of me follow a pattern. I would prefer seeing something out there and just create the design on my own. So that's what happens. When you look at the picture that you have on the screen right now, it's actually, I've always carried pen and paper with me everywhere I go. It went unnoticed when I had little kids with me because it was, for the kids. But even today, I always carry pen and pencil with me because I never know when I will have an idea and I will need to draw it. But unfortunately, actually, with cell phones now, we can actually take pictures. So it doesn't look so weird when I don't have to stop and start drawing. So that's one good thing that I like about the cell phones. But now let's go back to that design that you see on the screen. That's one source of inspiration. For example, I drew that when I was at a park with my kids when they were playing. I noticed a woman that had a traditional African dress with that pattern on the fabric, and I was just mesmerized. I really liked the design. I said, okay, I have to draw it down because I have to figure out how to transfer that design into a quilt. And so from that drawing that you see in the picture came this quilt that actually was made through it after. So that's how to explain a little bit my process. I have to say that a lot of my designs finalize the how-to in my brain when I'm in my shower, because when I have 3 kids and a business, the only time I get me time is in the shower. So a lot of times I would, finish the shower and hurry up to start drawing or start writing something, or calling up a friend saying, okay, I have this idea, can you do this? And so a lot, 8 a.m. or even 7 a.m. to be honest, that's when the creativity flow at best for me. And so showing you in 2007, an example of one key moment that really made the whole design take off for me. I fell in love with the collection of fabrics. And so I decided during that weekend, because I saw the fabrics on a Friday and I was going for a week camping for the weekend with the family. And again, I brought my pad of graph paper and pens and my colored pencils, and I started designing the quilt. So the picture you see there is the actual design that I drew that weekend camping. And when I came back to the store, I made a block of the month out of the design, and more than 40 people signed up for the project. So it was a turning point for me. I understood that I had the talent for designing quilts, but also the talent for writing clear instructions and having people come back month after month for the next block and showing how they were able to finish the block and go through being able to have those points that match up. Having helped many clients succeed in their project, I knew how to adapt a pattern to make it accessible to everybody, whatever their level of their skill level was. So that's something that the turning point for me in 2007. After that, in 2012, that's when I really gained more confidence and writing patterns. In the search of inspiration, I have to say that at that point, let's go back to 2011. So I had 3 boys. The youngest was a little bit under 2 years of age. And so I had a lot of customers at the store who wanted to participate in the creation of my designs. And so we had started a group called Souris Prétexte. So Souris, the mices, would be to recall Cinderella, who with all the mice who were preparing her dress for the big gala night. And prétexte is a pretext for us to go to the store and meet up and make some quilts. And also pretext because they would be able to see the pattern before it was actually printed as a complete pattern, and they can make the design, test the design to make sure that there weren't any mistakes in the design. So there was a meeting on April 1st, 2011, and I couldn't figure out what to present that day. And that's when I remember that April 1st is actually April Fool's Day for us in my family. So I said, why not make a paper piecing fish for the April Fool's Day meeting? And so I created this quilt block with paper piecing, and everybody made a fish and really enjoyed the whole design. And at that point I said, okay, well, you can make, placemats and we're done. And they were all saying, no, these blocks are too cute. You can't just make a placemat. You need to rethink it because it has to be bigger than a placemat. So going back home, I started designing a quilt, and actually this quilt became a twin size bed. And that actually twin size bed quilt won my first ribbon, which is actually the Juror's Choice at the Salon de la Courtepointe Quebec. Can you guys see me? I think I lost, okay, I'm back, sorry. So the quilt won a ribbon, a judge's choice for in 2012 in Salon Courtepointe Quebec in Montreal. Subsequently, also got on the cover of a magazine, a French-Canadian magazine called Création et Déco, and then it was published in an American book. So that's when I really started gaining confidence in my work. And after that, in 2014, I won a 2nd place at the Vermont Quilt Festival. And this quilt was inspired by blocks that I found on one of the electric quilt software. I actually, from several blocks, I actually combined them all to make one pattern, which was published on their blog later that I believe was the same year. In 2016, I also won 2 ribbons. The first ribbon was the second place at the Salon de Courtepointe Quebec with my Lone Star quilt. And during the same month, I won a second place ribbon for my Sochi, Remembering Sochi quilt at the Vermont Quilt Festival. Now for the quilt Remembering Sochi, I won't go into too many details because it's a completely different presentation that is available for guilds if interested. But all I want to say now is talking about my quilting journey. After winning those 2 awards in 2016, I took a step back to find and just took a sabbatical, I guess we could say. Once that quilt was finished and the pattern Dancing Diamonds published with Plum Easy Patterns in the United States, I really felt the need to go and just be on my own in my studio and create quilts without having to write any patterns or take any pictures. Just do some quilting for the fun of it and give them away right away because I had so many quilts I didn't need anymore in my house. But it's during 2017 that I was also asked by Quilters World to write more articles, as I had started doing guest special articles featuring designers like Kid Vincent, Debbie Miller, and Deborah Campbell. They asked me to continue, and I started to write for an article on Nancy Crow. And then I promise I'll only write 1 article, but I just can't help it. I simply just love the quilting world. So I continued, and I actually interviewed Victoria Finley Wolf and wrote an article on her for Quilters World. And after that, I decided to continue on my blog, on my website, to write about Canadian and French Canadian quilters, such as Paul Léger and Lise Bélanger and Colette Dumont. So I just started all over again writing articles, but they weren't patterns, they were really article lifestyle. So that's something I liked. And studying the career path of these artists made me understand that all the similarities that we all have as quilters. So we constantly seek new challenges without it being like an obligation, something to do. It's just the hamster in our head that just keeps on turning. I often say, there's I always forget to check, but I think there's about 30 something, let's say 32 consonnes and voyelles, yet we can write so many different stories. And then even in music, there's just nine notes. But look at all the beautiful music we can hear. There's such a variety. And I think it's the same thing in the quilting world. I mean, we have so much fabric, but there's so many different creations that can be done with the same. And so that's what I love about quilting, and that's what I want to keep writing about. And it's also at that time that Quilt Social asked me if I would collaborate with them. Quilt Social is a website that's specialized in the quilting industry. And they show, there's a blog a day, so you can really have fun and go through the whole, there's a lot of people working, writing blogs for them, and it's just really fun to be part of that group. And so they contacted me and they asked me if I would be willing to start writing blogs about the new sewing machine that came out from FAF, which was the Creative Icon. And that was really getting me out of my comfort zone. So I decided to accept the challenge. And that's what got me launched right back into the quilting world in 2018. Another beautiful surprise for 2018 was after me promising myself that I would never go through all this pressure again. Well, I did it once more, but this time it was really a nice outcome because my quilt Remembering Sochi won Best of Show at the Quilt Festival in the United States in Chicago. It was in Chicago and in Houston in fall. So I went to the Chicago show in April. And it was just really a joy to be part of that whole scene. And there's nothing more awesome than sharing our obsessions with others. So I know right now it's difficult to find ourselves in an exhibition, but whenever the time comes back, I really want you to go to a quilt show and enjoy it. I just love being able to talk to the visitors and explain my journey and answer their questions about my quilt. And you know something, a quilter can spend years alone on a project, just trying to work out every little difficulty that they encounter. And after all this time alone solving these challenges, it's really nice to be able to share with others. So don't hesitate to go and talk to the artist who's there with their quilt and ask questions, and just it's part of the whole show. So please do that. And I want to show also my biggest fans. So here's the magical moment in Chicago, was being there with my parents. They've always been the biggest supporters of my obsession, even though they don't understand it. I mean, remember, no one is a quilter in my house. My mother is definitely not a seamstress, so she doesn't get it. But they were very proud to be at Chicago with me. So that was a good time that we had all together. And remember the second slide I showed you, where there's a picture of my two boys with their quilt, where they both won ribbons at the Vermont Quilt Festival and at Courtepointe Quebec. Well, imagine that since 2014, every time I brought a ribbon home, my son Laurent would say, my ribbon is bigger than yours. So when I finally got my quilt back with the ribbon, which is right here, I finally able to tell him, well, you know what, Laurent, now my ribbon is bigger than yours. And in fact, I also realized that being able to have this quilt winning an award in Chicago was made me realize that it was a good lesson in perseverance for my children. We're so used with social media these days that we only see pictures and images of the moment of success, the moment of achieving your goal, the moment of winning the ribbon or winning a medal. Nobody tends to see the work that comes behind it, the years of practice, and sometimes also several failures before achieving that success. And my kids were with me since the beginning of the Courtepointe adventure, since 2004 for the Laurent anyways. And so he got to see the evolution. And every time from that day, they would work on a project, work on a homework, and they would not get the score they wanted to get. I would now always remind them that the journey is not the end result, the first end result. You need to work hard. You need to practice and practice and practice. You cannot be first the first time. And that was a good lesson that I was able to show them through winning that award in 2018. Now, after that, I guess, there's a French saying that says, 100 fois sur le métier, remettez votre ouvrage. And I guess in English, you could say practice makes perfect, right? So I got back on the saddle, I guess, and I started making quilts again based on my obsession of dancing diamonds. So after winning the show with Remembering Sochi, I decided to do different variation on my same obsession, which is these diamonds that are set out this specific way. And so I made this quilt called Some Like It Hot, and it actually won, it was a semi-finalist at the AQS Quilt Show in Paducah and Grand Rapids in 2019. I also worked on another quilt called Fall Foliage. And this quilt was made there's a fabric company called Banyan Batiks who asked me to, if I could use their, it's kind of like a dream come true for any quilter to have someone call and say, hey, I got a bunch of fabrics. Could you make a quilt out of it? And they're nice quality. So it's really a dream come true. So when they asked me, we have a bunch of our first line of Banyan Batiks. We'd like to showcase them at Quilt Festival, Quilt Market in Houston in fall 2018. Could you make a quilt with all of our scraps from the first launch? So of course I had to say yes, and I made this quilt, Fall Foliage, who then got to be a semi-finalist in 2019 in the AQS Quilt Show of Paducah and Grand Rapids. And another note, because I'm always trying to perfect my work, this quilt was actually quilted by me. So I was very happy on this. For me, it was a new era. But I've only been showing you so far the finished products. And as I said, there's a lot of work behind every single quilt. So I have to take some time and show you the process. It's not just the final end result. There's a whole a lot of years of working before that. So I always start my inspirations with the fabric. You'll be surprised to learn that I don't really have a huge fabric stash. I actually have always said when I owned a quilt shop that you should buy fabric based on project needs, not just because you're in love with the fabric and you wanted to bring it back home. So if you don't have a project, you don't buy it. And I've done the same thing for me. Even though I love the fabric, if I don't have a project, I don't buy it. And once the project is finished, that's when I can start having a stash, once the project is finished. And so whatever's left from that project, if it's 40 centimeters or more, I will fold it and put it in a drawer, and everything is sorted through colorways. And that's how I sort my fabric. And anything that's smaller than 40 centimeters, I basically cut into strips. And those strips are then stashed into bags. And so because most of my work is based on the dancing diamond pattern, and I do the dancing diamond designs through strips. So it's just comes naturally for me to cut everything into strips, put them into bag. And when I start a new design, I will pull out a bag based on the colors that I need and start the project. So that's how I work with the fabric. And then for my studio, it might be a surprise, big scoop. I don't have a studio. When I had my quilt shop, yes, I had 2 classrooms that would become my studios for me to design my quilts, and I could make really huge quilts there. It was just wonderful. Everybody can tell you that I would make such a mess when I would start designing. But ever since 2016, I haven't had that chance. And so I think that if I look throughout time, the best time that I could actually concentrate and work on a quilt. So when I would bring my kids to my parents' place, which is like 200 kilometers away. So I would go back into the Outaouais and I would just squat my parents' dining room. So I would really take over, bring in my sewing machine, bring in all the gears, and my kids would actually leave with my parents and go to museums, go swimming, go anywhere and watch a movie, just so I can get 1, 2, 3 days of pure designing and sewing. And so that's how I worked. And now I can say I moved into a new apartment in July, and my living room is my design studio. So I've actually set up pretty nicely. I'm happy with what I've made. And I'm going to try one day to actually write a blog so you can see all the new tricks that I found to have an accessible designing area that can still look suitable when you have visitors. So that's my trick. No sewing space. It's actually my living room. Now, once all of that is done, comes the rest, because you can cut, sew, make your quilt, but then you have to write the pattern. And so that's a whole other a monster, I guess that would be the proper word. So you have to be able to write, you have to be able to take pictures, you have to be able to edit, you have to be able to use softwares, and you also have to be able to transfer the files to the publishers. And that's a whole other, in short, we constantly are learning every aspect. It's not just making the quilt, it's everything else after. My biggest innovations or biggest investment in the past 2 years have been, first, the purchase of the FAF Creative Icon. Remember, Quilt Social had asked me to write about that sewing machine for a year. And when it came time to send it back because the writing was over, I said, no, there's no way. So just, send me the invoice. And I kept the sewing machine, and it has been the best investment for me because it has really helped me achieve a higher level of precision, and quilting is really much easier now that I have that sewing machine. But mind you, I had been working with an entry-level sewing machine for 20 years. All of the ribbons that I had won prior, even the best of show ribbon, remember, it was made with an entry-level sewing machine. This one came after. So, and then the other biggest investment was buying professional photo studio equipment. So it allowed me to take better photos and be accepted in American shows, because the picture is really the competition to get in. So that really helped me get the proper lighting and the proper quality of picture to show. It's the same thing for my blogs. Being able to have that kind of lighting and that kind of work setup helped me to have better picture quality for my blogs. So that's the other aspect that we don't necessarily see when you see a picture on social media. It's not just the work to make the quilt, it's the work to get that picture right. So quilting is also a whole lot much more than the making of quilts alone in our studio. It's true that quilting is a very solitary hobby, but it doesn't stop here. It shouldn't stop there. One thing that I've understood when I had my store, and I continue to live it, is to have a social, also have the social side of the quilting. Meet as many people as possible that are sharing that same passion as you. Because, you know, when I'm home with my 3 kids and everybody else and my family, nobody gets it. No, I'm the only quilter in my family. So it's important for me to go out there and go and meet these other people that love quilting as much as I do. It helps me, it stimulates me, working together with colleagues and exchanging, it really inspires and helps me into wanting to do more in the quilting industry. So, you know, don't stay alone in your basement. Another way for me to stay connected is by writing. So luckily I have LinkedIn to help me remember all the articles I've written so far. So since 2009, I've written over 22 articles in Canadian, American, and European magazines. And since 2018, I've also been working a lot on blogs instead of magazines, and mostly with Quilt Social. But throughout 2019, I was also a Northville Artisan, and that was a lot of fun too. So I've also published 2 patterns with Plum Easy Pattern, an American company, where you can see the dancing diamond, and also dancing diamonds being produced as a bag, which is called the gem bag. But also for the French-speaking quilters, I've also written 4 how-to guides in French for them. And I've also made several videos, some of them of classes that I was giving at the store during Courtepointe Quebec. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I decided to make the videos accessible on my YouTube page for quilters to be able to have access to how to make quilts during this time. Quilting, I have to say that quilting has helped me through many difficult moments. It really, you know, the hamster in there helped me go forget bad moments in my life and focus on beautiful colors and beautiful designs, and, you know, would cheer me up no matter what happened in my life. And I'm really hoping that having these classes available on the YouTube will enable more people, especially during this pandemic, to, you know, keep on focusing on the bright side, on the colors, instead of on the grays in this world, especially with winter coming along. So I keep coming, I like to keep myself out of my comfort zone, I guess. That's one thing. I like to challenge myself. I like people challenging me, especially in the quilting world. So this quilt is actually what I had been working on for the past 2 years. Really, so far, I guess every time I do a new quilt, I say, oh, it really got me out of my comfort zone, but this one really got me out of my comfort zone. It taught me so much more things. First of all, I got permission from Novembre to reproduce her seal, which into a quilt. And the reproducing that seal was a mixture of hand piecing and machine piecing, needle turning applique, and also fused applique. Also, reverse applique was used as well on this design. I also had Lise Bélanger who coached me on how to quilt this piece, because it was, again, a whole different world for me to quilt that piece. And so just showing you this picture because I want you to realize that we are always a quilt away from perfection or from learning something new, no matter how many quilts you've made, there's always a way to learn something new. And that challenge, that seal for me, the first thing I did was those 2 eyes, because I needed to have eye contact and I needed to talk to him because he was such a challenge, but such a beauty. I'm very happy I have him. As soon as I enter my home, it's the first thing I see, and it's really for me, it brings me a lot of joy. And I'm challenging you to find something like that to get you out of your comfort zone. There's also I'm also working on the block of the month. I'm participating with Paul Léger. I know we're supposed to say Paul Léger, but when we started meeting and talking, I called him Paul Léger, and he never said, no, that's not how you pronounce it. So I can't, I know it's Paul Léger, but I keep on saying Paul Léger. I apologize, but Paul's okay with that. And I also work with Hélène Thériault on this quilt along with Quilt Social. So it started in September. It's not too late to participate, to join the fun. We show a quilt, a new block every 2 weeks. We are presenting block number 5 next week. And you can always go back and see the first segments that we've been doing since September. This is a lot of fun. We're 3 people working together with, we each have our own fabric line. So the fabrics that you see on the picture is actually my fabric line. And we each have our own, and we are also going to make different sizes. So I'm making a bed runner. Elaine is making a full queen size bed, and Paul is making a throw. So it's just fun to see, again, working on the same block, but different fabrics, different size at the end, and it becomes a complete different quilt. And that's what I love about quilting. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you for being here. I know that you can also participate in spreading the joy of quilting in Quebec. So it's not just me, it's not just Courtepointe Quebec. You can also participate to spread the joy of making quilts. How? Well, you can interact with us on social media. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel and watch some videos. You can also like Courtepointe Quebec's Facebook page. You can also like Quilting with Class page, and also Twitter and Instagram. And you can interact with us, you know, have a thumbs up or a heart, or even write a comment, because we love to have that kind of interaction, and it actually helps us and keeps on going. And that's what because that's what we like doing. And finally, if you haven't done so already, do subscribe to Courtepointe Quebec, and so that we can all promote and promote quilting in Quebec. And the more people that are participating and joining Courtepointe Quebec, the more financially we can help the whole province to promote and show, because we have so much talent, and we really ought to pay more attention and be part of this association, so we can see so much more people talented be part of this whole, whatever, I don't even know where the live webinar, web seminars. I mean, I'm just waiting to see so many other people do their own presentation. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Claire. And thank all of you for spending the afternoon with us. We will keep you informed of further conferences in our info flash newsletter. I welcome anybody to if you have questions, to speak up now. We did have a comment from Lise Bélanger. She wrote down, "Hi Claire, I watched the French version and couldn't comment. Thank you for the presentation. It's very inspiring." Anybody else? Oh, there we go. Bonnie Frappier, very interesting. Thank you for sharing. Diane Sichon, hi Claire, one quick question. Do you use a color wheel? I always have a lot of problems choosing colors.
Yes, I do use the color wheel. There's a CNT Publishing has the color tool, which I have several. I wish I had one right beside me right now. One of them I've actually unhooked, and I use it, and whenever I go shopping, I bring the colors to go shopping with me to make sure that I buy the right color. And I live by the book that she has. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank, but yes, color tool, it's my life. It's I've learned complementary analog. I can never say that word in English. So yes, it was part of a seminar and a class I would give at Courtepointe Claire. You gotta, yes, color wheel all the way. Yes.
Okay. Meredith Lamson says thank you. And any more
Thank you.
questions? Wait a minute, more. Okay, thank you to Claire from me, Louise. And Patty McCurdy, are you giving online classes?
Oh,
Claire?
okay, I have to say, I forgot to mention that I did say it in French. I work full time, and I have 3 kids. So I really have 2 hours to dedicate to quilting a week. And I never say no to a new challenge. It just has to fit in my schedule. So would love to, just got to figure out how to do it.
Okay. Diane Sichon answers, says thank you in response to your answer. Linda Dorner, sorry, I may have mispronounced your name. Love the presentation. It seems to follow my own path 50 years ago. And that's the game. We're done with the questions. So
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Claire.
Bye.